as all the forces are lining up, all the stars are aligning politically, and everyone can just feel that deep breath before the armies collide into each other. Is that an accurate assessment, James Wesley Rawls?
Yeah, I think you're right, Alex. Things are definitely coming to a head. The folks who are pushing the New World Order have definitely taken the gloves off, and they've also kind of let their guard down. They've let their full agenda be seen by so many people in so many different ways that is now abundantly clear exactly what they have planned. And they are no longer being secretive and conspiratorial about it. A lot of what they're doing is now out in the open, and they're, again, not pulling any punches. They are pushing as hard and as fast as they can to institute one world government in our lifetimes. And I think that the Patriot movement, the libertarian movements, and just the freedom movement in general has caught on. People are waking up. People are getting actively involved politically. People are getting involved out on the street with their cell phones, with their smartphones, taking video of some of the tyranny that's coming down around us. And people are getting actively involved. A good part of that ties into family preparedness. A lot of people are stocking up and teaming up and training up because they can see what's coming in the very near future.
The enemy loves to say all day, where's the tyranny? Where's the world government? Where's the bans on speech? Where are they coming for the guns? Even as it was happening, they would sit there and deny it. But now they're just doing it out in the open, but still denying they're doing it, and it's discrediting them. What is the modus operandi there?
Well, I think their level of fear of retribution, whether it be political or otherwise, has dropped a bit. They're just feeling very brazen, very self-confident that they can get away with this. They've seen that they've pushed and pushed and pushed, and the American people really haven't pushed back. And because of that, they've become brazen. And along with that brazenness comes a puffed up self-confidence that I think will be part of their downfall.
Well, I've been asking some of the questions here, and I've got more, but get into what you see as front and center right now. Obviously, they're imploding the borders, a big plank of globalism in our face.
Definitely. Yes. The whole globalist agenda is getting played out in prime time right now. The dissolution of America's borders with NAFTA, with GATT, with the international trucking agreement, and so on, are blatant. The conservative or so-called conservative politicians, even coming from the Tea Party side, have caved in and are now saying, oh, we can't erect a border fence. It would be prohibitively expensive, impractical, or whatever. Our nation's borders are incredibly porous. We're, in the very near future, going to find out just how porous they are when a weapon of mass destruction comes across our border and is used domestically. And we're at a juncture now where the very sovereignty of the nation itself is at stake. I'm not just talking about a demographic shift here. I'm talking about the very sovereignty of our nation is in peril. Things are that bad.
And they're crowing from the rooftops. L.A., now the capital of Latin America, officially from the city. They are openly having George Soros and the White House fund kill the cop movements. What's the strategy there? We notice Europe's imploding its borders. We're imploding the borders. It's all the same tactics. The globalists are moving on every front. Is this just the beginning of the major offensive, or is this a vanguard? Do you expect it to ratchet up even more?
I think it could ratchet up more. I'm not sure what their exact time frame or timetable is, but they certainly could, through manipulation, orchestrate a lot more attacks on police officers and highway patrolmen, for example, without too much difficulty. We have a society, really, when you come right down to it, that is based on a government that trusts the people. And we've built our infrastructure accordingly. It's not like European nations where the whole underlying precept is that the government doesn't trust the people. Our nation was built on the precept that our own government is of and by and for the people, and that the people were to be trusted. And because of that, we built such a free and open society that it's created, unfortunately, some vulnerabilities, which I think will be exploited. And those vulnerabilities will be used as an excuse for greater and greater control. So, for example, for many, many years in our nation, we've enjoyed the freedom to travel. And I think that could very well be taken away from us. A lot of it's already gone. If you look at things like the Border Patrol checkpoints, for example, and even agricultural checkpoints, we no longer have full freedom to travel. But could you imagine a society where you essentially have to file a flight plan just to take a cross-country road trip? We very well could be in that situation soon. Or we could be in a situation where it's not up to us at all, but our own cars will be spying on us and reporting our movements to Big Brother with transponders that innocuously were put into the cars for the purposes of collecting tolls on individual toll roads or bridges. But now those transponders would be used to track our every movement.
Which we now learn they've been doing for 20 years since day one, premeditatedly. And you can see the White House and Soros funding this Kill the Cop movement that's expanding all over the country in an attempt to destabilize the country and bring in a police state. I have seen that wake up a lot of police and military, but it's the paradox. They're awake, but they still follow orders. The citizens are awake. We still put up with it. Meanwhile, leftists are out killing police, so they're so fired up. Once we demonstrate, they'll attack us. I wish there was some sophistication out there that everyone not be played like fiddles.
Right. Well, right now we have a lot of people being played like puppets, indeed, where radicals are being pushed toward killing police officers, for example, where, there wasn't even talk of that for about a 25 period in this country. You have to go all the way back to the late 1960s or early 70s with the Black Panther movement to see, at the time they referred to it as the Kill the Pigs movement. That kind of went quiet for a long, long time in this nation. And seeing that reemerge is very troubling, because that could be used as a pretext for a huge number of draconian controls on public meetings, on the freedom of assembly, freedom of travel, you name it. If this situation gets out of control and large numbers of police officers start being killed by radicals, that could, again, be used as a pretext for just out-and-out tyranny in this nation.
I agree. And what's crazy, James Wesley Rawls,
I think a lot of people would go along with it.
Exactly, is that they're nakedly doing it. I use that word naked a lot. They're so out in the open. They're so obviously evil. And then you add to it, don't use the name boy or girl, he or she in school. It's hateful. Body part selling of babies, open world government. I mean, this is crazy how evil these people are. From your research, we're going to break in a minute and a half, but from your research, who runs the New World Order? Who are the different power blocks? And what's their end game?
Boy, that's a huge question for a minute and a half, Alex. But
we can come back and finish it, too.
It's one of those meet the new boss, same as the old boss situations. It's the same international banking cartels that have existed since the 19th century and earlier. we have international banking influence. We have the all the power structures that go along with that. We have Interpol, their own policing organization that goes along with it. That's co-opted our own police departments and our own federal law enforcement. When you come right down to it, the same folks that are trying to enslave us are.
Tell you what, stay there. Answer when we come back. Give us the
people planned on this centuries ago.
Sure, stay there. Your Skype was breaking up. Come back and tell us. Saying the same people trying to enslave us now were the people, and your Skype broke up. James Wesley Rawls is our guest. Survivalblog.com.
Hello, this is Hank Hill, and I'm telling you what, you need to listen to Alex Jones.
Yeah. Infowars.com.
My judge, what is the secret of the universe?
Infowars.com.
They've hired a former Stasi operative to head up censorship of anyone criticizing the open borders in Germany. And they are arresting anyone and giving them 120 days in jail and or a 5,000 euro fine. Any criticism. And now they're telling women don't wear short skirts. They're telling people you need to house these folks in your homes. You have to understand, Hitler was willing to kill millions of people to get power. Stalin was willing to kill millions of people. Genghis Khan was, Julius Caesar. It's breaking eggs. And so for anybody who studied history, or anybody who studied world events, you know there's a confluence of things coming together. Most of the top historians in the world, long after Rawls and myself and others pointed it out, it's not rocket science, quite frankly, have come out and said, we have a lot of the same factors as World War I and World War II. The economic, the cultural, all of it. In the middle of it, we have West-hating, freedom-hating elites, communist mainly, run by big banks. What a paradox. Who want to make the middle class poor and break the back of Western culture. Who get on the news with a straight face and say, don't call yourself a boy or girl, you're a purple penguin. So I was asking one of the top survivalists in the world, best-selling author, Mr. Rawls, give you his website up on screen, survivalblog.com. I was asking James Wesley Rawls the exacerbated question in his research, who's at the bottom of the rabbit hole here? What do the globalists want? What's their end game? I mean, I know in my own mind what their end game is, but I get why some new listeners hear this and just think it's fear porn. Well, you're going to think it's fear porn if there's a worldwide depression, which we're basically already into. You're going to think it's fear porn when they give your kid a forced inoculation or you go ahead and get it and they have a seizure and never talk again. This isn't a game. So I want you to understand, for those of you that have been insulated, that have been sheltered, you have no idea. The rest of the world's already in turmoil. Mr. Rawls, finishing that big question, take as much time as you want, about who runs it, where's it going, and then I want to get your prognosis on the world itself, what you see coming in the future, because you've been pretty accurate in the past, and then tell us about your latest novels you're working on. It's basically done, I guess, about to be published, about to be put out there on bookstore shelves, that basically predicted so much of what's now happening.
Well, Alex, yes, to get back to what we were talking about in the last segment, I think that when you come right down to it, the folks that are behind the New World Order are the same international bankers who have been pushing for this for centuries. And while their tactics have changed, their strategy hasn't. And when you come right down to it, these are folks who have all the money in the world, and once you have all the money in the world, the only thing that's left is power. They want to control all the nations of the world. And ironically, a lot of them don't even really care what system those nations are under as long as they control those nations. And that explains things like World War I and World War II, where you had, essentially fascists versus communists and some freedom-loving people on the sidelines. And the Cold War, which went on for such a long time, but the end result of it was an America that was less free. We're priding ourselves on the fact that we broke the back of international communism under the Reagan administration, but the end result back 30 or 40 years is that we now live in a less free country, and in a lot of ways, a country that's a lot more like the Soviet Union used to be now than what we had back in the 1980s. We have more central planning. We have less individual freedom. When you come right down to it, we are at the cusp of it'll probably be a third world war is what it's going to be called in retrospect. And exactly how the nations will line up for that war is difficult to say. And we have this huge wild card that's been created by the internationalists themselves, which is radical Islam. They want to have radical Islam as a foil, as the new enemy du jour, and they want to use that as the pretext for forming global power structures, global armies, global currencies, and global media and global control. To them, again, the bottom line is not what system gets put in place, but who controls that system. That's
right. You can see the beauty, and I want you to continue on this eloquent breakdown. Just like the Rothschilds 300 years ago would fund both sides of a European war, or 3 or 4 sides, then they just jump to the winner at the end and then dictate the terms to the defeated. Just like World War II, British intelligence and others had a secret peace treaty with Hitler. That's been declassified. They basically encouraged him to invade Czechoslovakia and Poland and Danzig and all these other places. I'm not saying Hitler was good. He was totally played. And then he had a treaty to attack the Soviets and they would stop, or attack the Russians, and then they double-crossed him there on just so many fronts. And you sit back and you realize, oh, my gosh, the elite running us in World War II was more evil and sophisticated than Hitler. And that's a hard group to beat that could actually play the Germans. And you just sit back in awe and you see them radicalizing Islam, turning it loose, giving them the weapons, letting them overthrow our allies, secular governments, taking over. It just goes on and on and on. And then you see the ultimate enemy is free will. It is Western Christianity. It is the Renaissance. And you understand, when they set up the Soviets, then we had to build up to fight them. But that was the globalists building up arms and a culture and a police state they again would control to then use against the people. You see how sophisticated it is. How do you get the public to even tune into that reality to understand that at the end of this end game, there is mass population reduction, world government, the end of religious freedom, forced inoculation. I mean, and now we're so close to it. Now in Europe, they're arresting you if you don't want to have 1,000 Islamicists in your town of 1,000. If you say it's wrong, I don't want to pay for it, they come and the Stasi arrests you. The Stasi. I mean, it's so naked. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's clever. I have to agree with you. And you were asking, how do we wake people up? The method I chose was to write novels, because a lot of people will not sit down and read a treatise on globalism or a treatise on economics, but they will read a novel. And starting first with my Patriot series, which was about socioeconomic collapse here in the United States, and now with my new series of novels that it's going to be at least a 5-book series called the Counter-Caliphate Chronicles, I'm exposing what they have planned to do in instituting a semi-successful global Islamic caliphate. My goal is to wake people up, to get people thinking, and to basically shift their paradigm so that they can they can see through this nonsense that's being fed to them on the nightly news, and they can reestablish critical thinking skills. That's what's really needed here. We need an educated electorate. We need statesmen instead of politicians, and we need people to stand up for their God-given rights and constitutional liberty. We need to reestablish a constitutional republic, and we need to defeat the globalists in detail and en masse.
Well, I would hear you, and I respected you. I've been interviewing you off and on for about 15, 16 years. First read one of your books 20 years ago, where you actually put real militia leaders and stuff, you know, in the book. And then I finally interviewed you, and you said, no, I'm kind of writing what I think may happen in the future, but putting it in a popular novel form so it actually reaches millions. And you've had some #1 New York Times bestsellers. But to now go back and read some of your books, which I've done, it makes me physically nauseous. I can't even read them because I do see how accurate you were. I'll be honest, I'd hear Glenn Beck, who's been wrong on a bunch of stuff, 6 years ago say there's a plan to launch a new caliphate. I would hear, things like that. And I would think to myself, this is overblown. They'd never actually bring in giant Islamic armies and let them start attacking to fully bring stuff down. But now I see there's 1.5 billion Muslims. They first successfully infiltrate them, take them over, put the most radical in charge, give them weapons, turn them loose, and let them take over large areas. And then what areas they don't let them take over, they'll use the attacks to take us over in the name of protecting us. They'll kill a bunch of cops with White House-run groups. The cops will then militarize. They'll then aim them at me. I mean, you can really see it. This is sick. So as I was saying, James, in the past, because I heard you talking about this 15 years ago, plans for these Islamic armies and the rest of it, I knew they'd wound up al-Qaeda for 9/11. That's now come out in the news. But to a great extent, it looks like under this whole world government system, they plan to give Islam a huge seat at the table and make everyone adopt a one-world religion where we can't have Christianity. We actually adopt a one-world religion that's partially Islamic, and that's how the politically correct use it. They say we've got to be tolerant of whatever the most aggressive, intolerant group is. Or you can't have a boys and girls bathroom. That hurts somebody else because this radical minority says they're a transvestite. I now see the paradigm of where they're going, and they know how politically correct and pathetic we are now. So they'll bring in a bunch of radical Muslims to bully us with government backing, and they believe we're so broke back, we will bow to them and worship them. So how do we not go down that road, and how did you see it coming so far away?
Well, to get back to your first part of your question, if you look at the way the internationalists and globalists operate, they always think in terms of multiple gains. They never do anything unless they're going to get more than one win out of the situation. And in the case of backing international Islam, what they want to do is two things. They want to have a worthwhile opponent that they can expend massive quantities of money on in the form of military armaments and military deployment and so forth. And they want to also draw a parallel between Islamic fundamentalism and Christian fundamentalism. They want to make us look like two heads of the same coin so that in their war on Islam, they can have a simultaneous war on Christendom.
That's right. They pass laws saying, be nice, be open, where you now lose your basic right in the process.
Yep, that's their goal. And I think that if you look at what's gone on in the events leading up to 9/11 and of course, everything that's happened since 9/11, it's all played into this kind of master plan of both building up international Islam and putting fundamental Christianity in the same breath as fundamental Islam. That's their goal. And they've played it very masterfully. And, of course, they have the mass media as unwitting dupes in all of this. And if you look at what's been poured out of Hollywood, what comes out of Madison Avenue, and what comes out of the halls of power inside the Beltway in D.C., it all fits together. And unfortunately, the folks that end up paying are the people, are soldiers deployed overseas who end up paying in blood, and the American people who are paying in the form of overtaxation and the diminishment of our individual liberty. You always have to ask yourself, who benefits? Qui bono?
James Wesley Rawls is here, just piercing insight. He can take 5 minutes of my babbling and in 30 seconds crystallize it down. But that's exactly what's happening, is a war on religious freedom by importing the most radical, intolerant groups who they've also used to take over the Middle East, and basically then bring in laws restricting all of our speech in a foil to, quote, suppress their more radical instincts, but also exempting them to be radical, but no one else can be, quote, radical. And if you expand on that, some of the good news I see, and I want to get James Wesley Rawls' take on this, is the military a couple years ago said no to backing a bombing of Assad in Syria for al-Qaeda. And we saw a lot of non-commissioned officers and officers hold up signs and go to Twitter and Facebook saying, I will not be the Air Force for al-Qaeda. I will not fight on the ground to kill Christians in Syria. They clearly saw that Assad didn't start the war. He didn't do anything. He's a good guy compared to al-Qaeda. He's certainly not perfect. And that the West is destabilizing the whole region. We'd already seen it in Egypt, Libya, so people understood it. Now, we have the former head of Defense Intelligence coming out a month ago and saying, we were ordered to back al-Qaeda in Syria. It was a conscious decision. And the reporter said, so Obama didn't know what he was doing. No, we were ordered. They knew exactly. We told them what they were doing. Now we have the former deputy head of the CIA coming out saying there needs to be an investigation. It appears they were ordered to cover up that we knew we were aiding al-Qaeda, which is really ISIS. So I was here every day. You were there talking about it. But now U.S. training helped mold top Islamic State military commander. That's in McClatchy today. They'll probably get a Pulitzer Prize for it. We told you 4 years ago. House Dems want 9/11 docs in Saudi Arabia declassified. President Obama orders behavioral experiments on American public with the CIA domestically. See, this is that's Daily Caller. See, it's all getting really weird now where CIA is operating domestically. And, you know, I'll be walking down the street and they'll have guys that are obviously military in plain clothes going, you ought to work with us, Alex. I mean, it's getting really weird how they have their soft intimidation going, how they're messing with people. But at the same time, the military people who aren't openly evil, who don't want to be bad, who know there's always been some corruption, but understand they were lied to. You don't dance with the devil and then he changes, you change. When we come back, I want to get into the good things that are happening. And what do you think about the situation where openly backing Islam, radical Islam, to go around and murder everybody, our own military saying no? Is there some breaking point where the spirit of sanity could wake up and we could say no to this divide and conquer strategy? I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox Special at InfoWarsLife.com. But Mr. Rawls, continuing in just the minute we have left, how big is it that our military is coming out and saying we don't want to back al-Qaeda?
Well, it's definitely a substantial shift. And it's evidence that people are waking up. Folks on the street, folks in the military. You don't have to be deployed to the sandbox 3 or 4 times to wake up. A lot of people are waking up just on their... a lot of these soldiers, sailors, airmen are waking up on their first deployment. They're talking with other people. They're looking at the big picture. They're seeing what's really going on.
There's no doubt that our country is in serious trouble right now. And if you're wondering how on earth we ever got in this situation, well, I'll tell you how. When the Democrats showed their true colors, you got angry and you elected Republicans. And then when the Republicans showed their true colors, you got angry and elected Democrats. And when anyone suggested to you that both parties were corrupt and that neither side were looking out for your best interest, you acted like they were crazy. But the real definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's why it is vitally important that you wake up, America, and break the matrix. Infowars.com, prisonplanet.tv, and The Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
Well, Dick Cheney openly wrote in the PNAC document, September 2000, they would use the clash of civilization by radicalizing Islam and allowing it to invade and attack the West to bring in world government. Well, Obama's actually doing it. This doesn't mean stir up the radical Muslims so you can go blow them up because you want to save America or whatever. No, you go blow them up so they hate you, then you radicalize them, then you bring them in. James Wesley Rawls, one of the top, probably the top survivalist authors and researchers out there, formerly Army intelligence, and just really knows his stuff. That's why it's so popular. Joins us. You got cut off by the break. 4 minutes here, 12 minutes in the next segment. Coming up, we'll start taking some calls. But James, getting into how big a game changer is it? Repeat what you said and continue. That our own militaries all across the board leaking, generals are going public. Hey, there's been a purge. Our government's betraying us. They ordered us to back al-Qaeda. I mean, it shows there is too far for the system to go. The couch potatoes may not care, but the military and even brass are saying no. That's got to really freak out the establishment.
Well, yes, I think they should be running for cover right now, because when the rank and file military and the military leadership wakes up to the gravity of the situation and really takes the blinders off and looks at what's really going on, how they've been played, and what the end result of all this endless round of deployments. It's just deployment after deployment after deployment that's tearing apart families, that's wearing down our military, that's wearing us out logistically, that's stretching our supply chain to the breaking point, and that's essentially hamstrung us from the ability to fight a conventional war.
Well, they can see the setup. That's the key.
Down to it, everything that's gone on since 9/11 has gutted our military so that when World War III breaks out, it'll be just like the outbreak of World War I and outbreak of World War II, where we're not physically prepared to fight a conventional war on two fronts. We've been involved in counterinsurgency for so long, and we've reorganized and pared down our military and worn out our military to the point where we can't fight a two-front conventional war.
So the military is used to, at the brass level, Hegelian dialectic and dirty tricks and playing people off against each other, but they can see how our own military in America is being degraded, being set up, being prepared. Briefly, we're going to go to break and come back. You can talk more on this, but I know it's hard to see who's going to line up with who in World War III. In many respects, I think it's already started economically and with migrants and with destabilization, Ukraine, all of it. But what are some of the blocks that we could see allying themselves in World War III?
Well, again, it's difficult to predict, but I believe that they're going to try to have a pivot that will put China and Russia as counterpoles, and where the Islamic world is going to line up with the Russians. The Russian goal, of course, is to get their long sought-after warm water port. But as everything lines up for World War III, you're going to see some pretty strange alliances, and it'll be just like Orwell pointed out, where you have country A versus B and teaming up with country C or whatever, and then changing the order for the next World War. We could see some pretty strange bedfellows when everything lines up for World War III. And some of the folks that we have long depended upon to be allies may not be there for us.
And through the whole process, trillions are made for the central banks. We lose more freedoms. James Wesley Rawls, survivalblog.com, is our guest. After he leaves us, I'm going to launch into a lot of other news we haven't covered. We're going to be taking your calls for him here in just a moment. We're going to be getting into President Obama orders behavioral experiments on the American public in a new executive order. They say that's how they're going to better serve you, is targeting you with conditioning, with brainwashing. Just like the former Attorney General told the RTF Association, Radio, Television, Film, he said, it's time to brainwash the public. We don't just do the messages sometime. We hammer them. Turn in your guns. You can't say boy and girl. Everything's racist. I mean, these people are so evil. And they know they're bad. They don't think they're doing this for some greater good. They want total control. Obama lands in Air Force One and tells Africans they can't have air conditioning or cars. I mean, these people are just so bad. And they can't help it. James Wesley Rawls, other points you'd like to make to people about what you're most concerned about, what you see happening, negative things, positive things. We've now entered this time where people that were even halfway awake now know this is for real. I've always known it's for real. I've always hoped we could slow it down or stop it. It's beyond a sick feeling now. I'm not even afraid anymore. I'm just so disgusted with the people that want to be part of this and the collaborators. I mean, they're so openly signing on to evil. It gives me hope our military's trying to say no, but they just still move forward. I mean, what's it like for you, a veteran, a patriot, a guy who's been fighting this for 20 years, 25 years? What's it like for you?
Well, it is very discouraging, but at the same time, it is encouraging to watch people wake up, to see that people have finally lifted the veil and are looking at the big picture. They're seeing what's really going on a macro level. And they're no longer just concerning themselves with local politics, just with individual issues, but the larger issues, the big issues like who is really pushing for freedom in the world and who's trying to enslave us. They're looking at that as a bottom line issue. And just to back up for a little bit, I want to encourage your listeners and viewers to go ahead and make some purchases of things like storage food and nutritional products that will really help your family pull through, because I'm sure you've all heard that there's going to be an orchestrated collapse. Your family needs to be ready for that. And I consider it a great big win-win if you order some of those products through InfoWars. It's a win-win because not only will you be getting your family better prepared, but you're also going to be building a war chest for Alex Jones to get the message out there. Now, to get back to your question, I think that we are living in very perilous times, but it is both discouraging and encouraging because even though we can see the drums of war being beaten, we can see the storm clouds of economic catastrophe on the horizon, we can also take heart in the fact that our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, our fellow church congregants are waking up to the big picture. They're getting involved, and they're not going to back down. We also have a two-edged sword with modern technology in that, yes, modern technology is slowly enslaving us because we now have our own cars and our own computers kind of spying on us. But at the same time, we have technologies like smartphones that are in almost everyone's pockets. And that smartphone is an instrument of liberty. A couple of years ago, one of my sons and I started a free press credentials organization. And our goal there was to get press credentials in the hands of everyone, because in the modern context, everyone that owns a smartphone can be an on-the-ground journalist reporting on what's going on. And I encourage people to get those credentials and get involved. And when you see people's rights getting trampled, pull out your smartphone, turn it on in camera mode, and document what's going on. You can be part of the solution.
That's right. I mean, this is just a tool like a gun. The enemy is using it to control us. We have to use it to expose what they're doing and support good police when they're good, go after and expose bad police when they're bad. But I really see, despite the fact they're trying to hire thugs with these psychological actuaries, I've seen the police really wake up, give us so much good information, and the police I run into all over the country are some of the most informed, freaked out people I'm seeing, because they get in the coming civil war the globalists want to start, that they are going to be put on the chopping block, and that the system wants to use the crises that are coming to basically degrade them, cull them, soften them up, just like they're doing the military.
Right. So again, people need to wake up, get involved. The Free Press Credentials organization that I mentioned before, folks can find at cfapa.org. That's cfapa.org. And we're about the only organization out there that will issue free press credentials to anyone. All they have to do is print them out and slap a photograph on there and laminate a badge, and they are ready to get out there.
Well, you've been doing a lot to try to save this republic. I ran into a fella that knew you during the Reagan administration. I'm not going to get into how I knew him, but he was a pretty high-level fella, and he said that you were under him in some operations you were part of. But he was just telling me separately how awake the intelligence services are. He now works for a major computer company developing stuff for the Pentagon and others. But he just said that, he used to hear my show 15 years ago, and he couldn't even believe it. But that now he was basically more radical than I was. And I think we've hit that point now where people really get that the bottom's dropped out. And I kind of asked this question earlier, but I want to ask this question and then talk about the collapse they're engineering and then go to calls. But isn't it a spiritual issue at the end of the day when I really study these people? Because, I mean, I've always been a Christian, but I wasn't some Bible thumper guy. I wasn't somebody obsessed with it all the time. I wasn't somebody praying at every meal. I had God in my heart. I love justice. That was it. But the more I study these people, the more I fight them, the more I get around them, I realize they really are animated by a love of evil and a love of hurting justice, a love of dominating good people. And I just can't see how anyone's going to let this level. The other issue is our enemy is so chicken-necked. They're so weak. Their eyes have no fire. Why is it that such weak scum is dominating us? That just adds insult to injury. I mean, are we really going to let filth like this run our lives?
Yeah, it is troubling to see that. But in essence, what's really going on here is spiritual warfare. There are powers of darkness that want to enslave the whole world. And they will make a pact with the devil if they think that's what will get that power for them. And what you asked about our chicken-necked opponents, I think one of the reasons that they've been as successful as they have is because they've had the media elites in league with them. The media elite that pushes the mainstream news organizations, that packages and engineers everything that comes out of Hollywood and Bollywood and Nollywood. They're all in cahoots. That all goes back to academia, which was co-opted years and years ago by the leftists and globalists. And basically everyone that comes out of journalism school these days is going to be a left-of-center internationalist globalist. I went to journalism school back in the 1980s, and I was already a minority then. Perhaps 10% of the folks attending journalism school would be classified as Christian conservatives at that time. And I think, unfortunately, it's even less now. So the media is not on our side, and that's what's allowed the folks who want to enslave us to frame the whole conversation.
And create a false reality. And then again, I look at them, they're not even real liberals. It's a cult. They all talk the same. They're ordering us how to speak. They're saying we've got to pay for everybody else's stuff.
Yeah. they are, whether consciously or unconsciously, playing into the hands of the globalist elitists that want to enslave us. And they think it's somehow in our best interest for them to shove all this down our throats. And they do it across the board. If you look at almost everything that comes out of Hollywood and all the advertising that comes out of Madison Avenue, all of the major network and also cable network news, is all very neatly, slickly packaged, and it all fits their agenda and all uses the same gosh-awful rhetoric that wants to remove individual liberty.
It's really amazing because I look at the Republican establishment that's obviously a handmaiden to this whole thing, but they're just moving so quick. They're so obvious. They're so out in the open about it all. They're so brazen, but I really see it as their arrogant, bravado-driven response to the fact that they know people are waking up, but at the same time, waking up but then not taking action. A, how do you think the average person should take action? I think you hinted at it, becoming a citizen journalist, just doing something to warn others. But B, getting into the collapse. You were on with us, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, the last time you've been writing your new novel, so you couldn't come on. But you'd never said, I believe collapse is right around the corner. I believe it's imminent. Last time you were on, if memory serves, you said, no, I think we're a year away. I think this is it. You can see the preparations. Well, now, you're in most areas of the world, the collapse is already here. So what's your view on global collapse?
Well, I think it's definitely being orchestrated. If nothing else, the mountains of debt that's been built up, public and private, and the derivatives to go along with it are sowing the seeds of disaster. And at any given time, the elites can pull the plug, implode the system, wipe out entire currencies, and with it, wipe out and unseat entire governments in the process. That's the end game for them. So we're on the cusp of a collapse. The question here in the United States is, do the elites want to wait until after the next presidential election? Do they want to see a Democrat seated before it happens? Or do they want, or is their goal to wait, or do they want to see it collapse first and then have try to make a Democratic candidate look to be another FDR-style savior for our economy? I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but either way, individual families need to get prepared. Folks need to not just wake up, but they also need to stock up and team up and train up to be ready for this. Because it's only going to be the families that are well prepared where you're going to have someone who can have their head up to look at the big picture. Everyone else is going to be concerned with where they're going to get their next meal for their family. Folks who are operating at that level are not going to be part of the solution. They're going to just be individual survivors out there.
Sure. Look at how
surviving. I want people to thrive so that they can be part of the solution. They can be part of rebuilding a truly Republican form of constitutional government in this nation.
I totally agree. I mean, look at how Europe would bring in millions this year of radical Islamicists and encourage them and let them get there and then arrest people that criticize it. This is really happening. Now the next wave will be 5-10 million. I mean, this is World War III by the central banks to bring down Europe and the U.S. They're pulling the same stuff here. They're going to cause a nationwide rioting and killing of police. The feds will come in as the saviors, federalize everything. You can really see that they've decided to try to do this. They're trial ballooning it now. Their trial balloon is incredibly destructive, James. And
yes.
I think this
we don't really have an economy left. We have a shell of an economy left in this nation, and it's just moving along because of inertia and because of the ZIRP, the zero interest rate policy that we've had for so many years that's creating a false prosperity. To keep
Do you think the Fed will get rid of that or keep that?
I'm sorry, say again?
Do you think the Fed will keep zero interest rates or will start raising them?
I think they will for the foreseeable future because they've really backed themselves into a corner. If they even raise interest rates 0.25%, it's going to be perceived as a turning point, and that could collapse the entire economy.
I want to go to break, come back. Absolutely. I want to go to break, come back to take calls with you for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to let you go. We're going to get Dr. Group in here. I'm going to cover other news, but I appreciate all your time. Eagle Eye and others, I'm going to go to you, in fact, right now. But after the break, I've got something really important to say, folks. It's just, I'll just say it now. I'm going to Eagle Eye after the break because I want to get your brief take on this. I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy around or the toughest guy around, but I do have a good sixth sense my whole life. I got a gut that's never wrong, a nose that's never wrong, they say. And that's what I go with as I get older and things, just get better the more I follow my spirit. That's what it really is. I've never had my sixth sense so on fire. It's beyond being afraid. It's beyond the hair on the back of my neck standing up. It's so over the top, James, that I just feel for people that don't know what's coming. Because obviously it may not be here this year or next year, but in other parts of the world, it's already here. I mean, my gut tells me, get ready for full out defend your life. And my gut tells me it's not just you, it's going to be everybody. I mean, my gut tells me all hell is going to break loose. And what we're going to see is going to make World War II look like heaven.
You may very well be right, Alex. And after the break, I'd be happy to take those calls.
We got 40 seconds. What does your gut tell you? Because off the facts, what does your gut tell you we're facing?
Well, I think that we're definitely on the cusp of economic collapse. And with that, they'll probably try to bring martial law to select cities in the United States. They'll use the collapse and all the riots and looting that goes along with it as a pretext for instituting martial law in those cities.
Okay, back to James Wesley Rawls of survivalblog.com. Can't wait to have him back up in December when his new novel comes out. But now let's run through your calls. Eagle Eye in Tennessee, thank you for holding. Thanks for being part of the broadcast. Go ahead. You're listening on WNFZ 94.3 FM in Tennessee.
Knoxville. Thank you, gentlemen. I just wanted to pray for peace, love, and protection for you and for all the warriors of liberty. And knowledge is power, is key. Knowing is half the battle. Seeing what's coming up front gives us the opportunity to be able to affect change. Prayer does affect change, and I pray that God would show us what He would have us to do, and that we would hear Him and obey Him and be able to do those things, because that's going to be critical. Now, the analysis of the situation, as I see it, the number one problem that we are going to have to come up with a solution to is the coming and pending communications total blackout that will completely eliminate our ability to communicate with one another, especially for those who are of like mind and of spirit that are truly the patriots of this country trying to fight for the liberty and freedom. And I wanted to get both of your thoughts on the best way to handle that.
Well, let me just say this and have James have the floor on this subject. And Dr. Group's coming in the next segment. I'll do about 20, 30 minutes with him in overdrive. And then Anthony Gucciardi's going to come in as well, because I've pushed Group back, and that's wrong, and he's got key intel for us. But what you said is the entire truth, and I don't know why I don't say it more. I do this so much. I'm so exhausted, and I'm not complaining. It's just that I don't do very well a lot of the time because I just do too much of this. But asking God to lead, God, and direct us is key. If we just pray to God to show us what to do, to fight this great evil, and to try to lessen its attack, because we know it's coming. I've gone way past the point of trying to stop it. We do need to ask God to tell us what to do. Isn't that true? I mean, I know you're going to agree, James, but can you talk about that and what's key for us to pray for? And then, B, get into his communications takeover with the Obama kill switch we know is in place.
Right. Yes, it's important that we be in close covenant with God. We can't expect God's covenant blessings unless we're in the covenant with Him. And we need to pray specifically that God would put us in the right place at the right time with the right people. I think that should be our key prayer for the months and years to come, because we're going to be coming into a very dark period for our nation. I refer to it as the age of deception and betrayal. That's the age we're entering, the age of deception and betrayal. And to focus on communications, that's one of the things that we have been writing about year after year in Survival Blog, is the importance of every family having multiple modes of communication. I do recommend that people, even if they don't want the shackles of an FCC license, at least go to a ham radio swap meet, talk with some of the old timers there, and get yourself set up for both 2-meter and HF communications equipment. And for point-to-point communications at an individual retreat or ranch, I recommend the MERS band radios. That's MURS, which stands for Multiple User Radio System. It's a unlicensed band that is, it sits fairly close to the CB band, but it's very underutilized. It will not be crowded in the event of a crisis, at least in suburban and rural areas. And again, there's no license required, and it will be your means of communication. It also sits right next to the National Weather Service frequencies, so you can have your handheld MERS walkie-talkie that's programmed with both your local MERS push-to-talk frequency and the National Weather Service alert frequency, which sits right next to that band, as well as having perimeter security via a system called a Dakota Alert. I've written a lot about that in my blog. The Dakota Alert system also uses the MERS band frequencies, so that one handheld radio can be your solution for push-to-talk, to talk with your neighbors and folks right there at your retreat for coordinating retreat security, as well as having access to weather alerts and being alerted when someone's entering your property through a Dakota Alert infrared driveway alarm system.
All right. God bless you, Eagle Eye. Anything else?
Thank you for your service to both of you, and God bless you. God bless America. Aerosol.
I tell you, folks, it's just... Thank you, sir. It's just so crazy to know that they really do plan. I mean, that's one big thing that's scary, James. You said years ago, other guests said years ago, the elites were buying secret airstrips, underground bases, running to the hills. Now they admit they're doing it. And just what a nasty elite to screw the world up so bad, they've got to go hide out, but they don't care because after all this, they'll come back and be our rulers. I mean, what a group of sick freaks.
Absolutely, Alex. And when you come right down to it, that's what's really going on. We have a power elite that has all the money in the world. They just want more power. And again, as I mentioned before, they don't care what system it's under as long as they're the ones at the controls.
And that's why they'll fund all these different groups and let there be a big battle, because they've got their operatives at the key levels. So when whatever is in power, they'll still be in control. I mean, what a group of loons. And what's crazy is they're already in control pretty much. They just want total global control. And so they're willing to endanger even themselves for the power grab. These people are psychopathic.
Yes, it is psychopathic, or at least sociopathic when you come right down to it.
Oh, man, I tell you. Let's go to Mitch in Georgia. Thanks for holding. You're on the air with James Wesley Rawls. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Hi, James. I just want to first take my hat off to you, Alex, and tell you how much of an amazing man, an amazing courageous patriot you are, same as you, James. And I just want to get right to it. Alex, you are one of the first and one of the most noble and courageous people that have exposed an issue I want to ask your thoughts about. In Endgame, the documentary, you exposed the organ harvesting of the Falun Gong, the spiritual movement in China, where now up to 4 million have been killed, and now it has been coined the largest genocide in history out of China, where now basically the entire Chinese economy has been used to eradicate the Falun Gong spiritual movement for their organs. And it's basically appropriate because Planned Parenthood has been doing the same thing. But what is going on with the Falun Gong in China has made Planned Parenthood look like little babies. And I just want to take my hat off to you, Alex, and ask James...
Well, please don't take your hat off to me. I mean, we expose that because that could happen to us. We have empathy, but absolutely, a great term you use, the globalists use economies and gear them to destroy who they want. That's what a command and control non-free market economy. A free market economy is what you want happens, the will of the people. But a globalist economy is what they want. That's a very powerful statement. James, your comment on what Mitch was just talking about.
Well, yes, organ harvesting en masse is definitely going on, both in China and here in the United States. And if I were a black American, I would be deeply, deeply outraged to know that the entire Planned Parenthood apparatus was specifically directed at the so-called urban areas of the United States. They actually wanted to reduce the black population of America. That's why they put so many of the Planned Parenthood centers in urban areas. They were specifically going after black Americans. And here they've been caught red-handed, literally red-handed, harvesting baby organs and selling them on the open market. It is a sick, sick system. And I'm glad that people are exposing this, but that is just one aspect of the larger battle.
Well, imagine what we don't know about. I mean, it's always worse than we even thought. And I happen to know a lot of stuff that's going on that I've mentioned on air, but people just can't believe it. I've read in scientific papers 20 years ago, they've created thousands of different human-animal chimeras. They just don't roll them out. In Costa Rica, in Thailand, all over. I mean, the abominations already committed by the elite are so horrible, I can't believe God hasn't already blown the whole planet up.
Well, one thing's for sure. We only deserve God's wrath, and we need to beg God to stay in covenant with us. And at this stage of the game, we are at the end of the church age. We cannot expect God to protect the United States as a nation. The best we can hope for is that he will protect individuals, families, and church families and communities at this stage.
Well, that's something I have a quandary with.
Because we should be imploring God we should be imploring him to protect us individually.
Thank you so much, Mitch. God bless you. Good to hear from you. Yeah, that's something. It's a paradox because I want to be protected. I want my family protected. But then if God just burned the whole planet up and started over, I would get it. I wouldn't blame God because, man, we have really taken free will and decided to just be absolutely evil.
Well, yes, that's what the media has been drumming into everyone's heads, that we are to be like gods and to turn our back on God, his sovereignty, his plan, and his covenant with us. So at this stage of the game, if you look at things like the abortion mills, for example, we only deserve God's wrath. And we can, at this stage, only beg God that he would stay in covenant with us and protect us. We need to pray the 91st Psalm.
Well, I tell you this, the enemy knows about these rules. That's why it's gotten us to go along with the corruption or deny it's there and let it happen so that we would lose our protection. And I just can't believe that it's this bad. It's just so insane that there's this many people that would consciously go along with evil. Dan in New Mexico, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Mr. Rawls. Pleasure to talk to you. I have one simple question for you.
Sure.
Sort of a hypothetical. If you were the president and CEO of Restore Liberty, Inc., given the amount of evidence that exists, and especially some new evidence that has come out through a researcher by the name of Rebecca Roth, why wouldn't you make the exposure of 9/11 the cornerstone of the strategy?
Are you asking me or are you asking our guest that?
I'm asking the guest.
Okay. Well, I've got to say that I don't think that 9/11 was entirely carried out with robotic aircraft, but there is substantial evidence that there were thermite charges pre-placed in those buildings. And I mentioned that just recently in my blog. I try to stay away from some of the more conspiratorial aspects because I don't want to run myself in little circles getting involved in minutia and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah, James, you're such a wise man because I've been exposed to 9/11 since the day it happened, since before it happened. We have the Saudis running it. We have the NORAD stand down. We have the PNAC documents. Our government, bare minimum, aided it. It's criminals. They're aiding al-Qaeda today. Our military knows. But then people call in and will bring up somebody, I don't even know who they are, and they'll say, hey, why aren't you covering this aspect? There's a giant compendium of people researching it. And a lot of them fight with each other and stuff, and it just becomes a big tar baby. Listen, criminals have taken over our government. They're harvesting babies' organs. They're putting fluoride in the water. They want world government. They're doing evil stuff. They're aiding radical Islam. We've already won that war. Most people now, our own military's coming out saying our government runs al-Qaeda and ISIS. So get the word out on that. I mean, you just don't win the argument getting into thermite charges, even though that's true, and they got the samples. You can see it happening. They obviously had somebody working with them inside. You can argue all day who did it. The problem is we can't prove it. See, it's like we're cops. We know we caught the guy with 10 dead bodies in his basement, but he won't talk. And so, or basically he was hit by a car. Let's say he's brain damaged. So we know he did it. But if we go to the prosecutors and stuff and try to get exactly how he did it, we'll never win the case. We just have to show that this is the main suspect. That's our job. The public is here to decide what to do about this. But hands down, 9/11 was carried out by the New World Order. People want to say it's our government, so then it's projected on firefighters and cops and military who are compartmentalized. No, the globalists that have taken over our government, they worked with foreign Islamicists, as they always do, look at today, to carry this out, and we need to demand the 28 pages be released. God bless you. I appreciate your call. I'm going to continue with these callers on NATO and on Islamic takeover and other stuff, but our guest has got to leave real quick, so let's go to Sam real fast, and then James. The last caller is for James Wesley Rawls. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to reiterate something. I guess it's more of a comment than anything else, but you always respected Muslims, Alex. I got to give you credit for that. But just so kind of the general audience realizes that we don't want to emphasize that, this is a war against Islam. Especially we don't want it to be a Christian versus Islam thing. And I hate that because a lot of times I see people kind of making it into that. Because, that people in the area, they've suffered a lot in the Middle East.
Yes, the globalists want to kill and enslave everybody. They have gone in and put the radicals in charge. They have killed a lot of good Muslims. There are good Muslims, in my experience. And I think it's terrible it's happening. But now the West is being targeted. So just like I was against the Iraq war and attacking Syria, I'm now against this globalist destabilization, now using the radical Islamicists they're bringing in. Thank you for the call. I want to get a final comment on that from James Wesley Rawls.
Sure. The Islamic threat is genuine. It has, in part, been manufactured. But the thing that we need to keep in mind is that the war on Christendom will continue. There's going to be huge numbers of Christian refugees in the coming decades. And I believe that there is actually a need for a new homeland nation for persecuted Christian and Messianic Jewish refugees who are going to be pushed out of countries in huge numbers in the years to come. And that's why I decided to write my Counter-Caliphate Chronicles series. That first novel, called Land of Promise, describes the establishment of a Christian homeland nation. And I also made it fictionally a Christian libertarian nation to illustrate a lot of other points. But I do think that is needed. And we need to pray that God would provide a safe haven for persecuted Christians all over the world. It's going to be needed, desperately needed in the years to come.
Powerful points. Survivalblog.com. Can't wait to have you on when the new novel comes out. James Wesley Rawls, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Alex.
You bet.
Unfortunately, you've grown up hearing voices that incessantly warn of government